Land of promise and pain. The conflict between Jews and Arabs is one of the most enduring and complex struggles in modern history. At its heart lies a dispute over land, identity, and sovereignty. This conflict has shaped the lives of millions and continues to reverberate across the globe. To understand this conflict, we must journey back in time. We will explore its origins, key moments, and the human stories that define it. Part 1. The origins of the conflict. 1. Ancient roots, a shared heritage. The land known today as Israel and Palestine holds profound significance for both Jews and Arabs. For Jews, it is the biblical land of Israel. It was promised to them by God and is central to their religious and cultural identity. Jerusalem, with its western wall, is the holiest site in Judaism. For Muslims, the land is equally sacred. Jerusalem is home to the Al-Aqsa Mosque, the third holiest site in Islam. The Dome of the Rock is where Prophet Muhammad is believed to have ascended to heaven. This shared connection to the land has often been a source of tension. Both groups view it as their rightful inheritance. 2. The rise of Zionism and Arab nationalism. In the late 19th century, the seeds of the modern conflict were sown. The Zionist movement emerged in response to widespread anti-Semitism in Europe. Led by figures like Theodor Herzl, Zionists sought to establish a Jewish homeland in Palestine. At the time, Palestine was part of the Ottoman Empire. Simultaneously, Arab nationalism was on the rise. Arabs in the region had lived there for centuries. They viewed the land as their own and resisted the idea of a Jewish state. The clash between these two national movements set the stage for decades of conflict. 3. The British Mandate and broken promises. After World War I, the Ottoman Empire collapsed. Britain took control of Palestine under a League of Nations mandate. The British made conflicting promises to both Jews and Arabs. The Balfour Declaration of 1917 pledged support for a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. It also promised to protect the rights of the Arab majority. These contradictory promises fueled resentment and mistrust. Arab riots and Jewish militancy became increasingly common. Both sides sought to assert their claims. Part 2. The birth of Israel and the Arab-Israeli wars. 1. The UN Partition Plan and the 1948 War. In 1947, the United Nations proposed a partition plan. The plan aimed to divide Palestine into separate Jewish and Arab states. Jerusalem was to be an international city. The Jews accepted the plan. The Arabs rejected it, arguing that it favored the Jewish minority. In 1948, Israel declared independence. Neighboring Arab states, Egypt, Jordan, Syria, and Iraq, invaded. The resulting war is known as the War of Independence to Israelis. To Palestinians, it is the Nakba, or catastrophe. The war ended with Israel controlling more territory than originally allocated by the UN. Hundreds of thousands of Palestinians were displaced. They became refugees. This event remains a central issue in the conflict. Palestinians demand the right of return for refugees and their descendants. 2. The 1967 Six-Day War and occupation. In 1967, tensions escalated again. Fearing an imminent attack, Israel launched a preemptive strike against Egypt, Syria, and Jordan. In just 6 days, Israel captured the Gaza Strip, the West Bank, East Jerusalem, the Golan Heights, and the Sinai Peninsula. The war transformed the region. Israel now controlled territories inhabited by millions of Palestinians. This led to the establishment of settlements in the West Bank and East Jerusalem. The occupation became a focal point of the conflict. Palestinians demanded an end to Israeli control and the creation of an independent state. 3. The Yom Kippur War and shifting dynamics. In 1973, Egypt and Syria launched a surprise attack on Israel. The attack occurred during the Jewish holy day of Yom Kippur. Although Israel eventually repelled the attack, the war exposed vulnerabilities. It led to a shift in regional dynamics. Egypt, under President Anwar Sadat, eventually signed a peace treaty with Israel in 1979. Egypt became the first Arab country to recognize the Jewish state. While this was a significant breakthrough, it also isolated Egypt from the broader Arab world. It deepened divisions among Palestinians. Part 3. The Palestinian struggle and peace efforts. 1. The rise of the PLO and intifadas. In 1964, the Palestine Liberation Organization, PLO, was founded. The PLO aimed to represent Palestinian interests. Under the leadership of Yasser Arafat, the PLO launched armed resistance against Israel. This included terrorist attacks. In 1987, the First Intifada uprising erupted in the occupied territories. Palestinians used mass protests, strikes, and civil disobedience to resist Israeli rule. The Intifada brought international attention to the Palestinian cause. However, it also led to harsh Israeli crackdowns. A second Intifada broke out in 2000 after the collapse of peace talks. This period was marked by increased violence on both sides. 2. The Oslo Accords and the peace process. In the 1990s, there was hope for peace. The Oslo Accords were signed in 1993. They established the Palestinian Authority. The accords outlined a path to Palestinian self-rule in parts of the West Bank and Gaza. However, the peace process stalled. Ongoing violence, settlement expansion, and political divisions were major obstacles. The assassination of Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin in 1995 dealt a severe blow to peace efforts. Rabin was killed by a Jewish extremist. 3. Hamas and the Gaza divide. In 2006, Hamas won Palestinian legislative elections. Hamas is an Islamist militant group. Its victory led to a split between Hamas-controlled Gaza and the Fatah-led Palestinian Authority in the West Bank. Hamas's refusal to recognize Israel and its rocket attacks on Israeli towns have led to repeated conflicts. Major wars occurred in 2008, 2012, 2014, and 2021. The blockade of Gaza by Israel and Egypt has created a humanitarian crisis. Widespread poverty and unemployment plague the region. Part 4. The human cost of the conflict. 1. Lives lost and dreams shattered. The conflict has claimed tens of thousands of lives. Both Israelis and Palestinians have suffered. Civilians, including children, have borne the brunt of the violence. Suicide bombings, rocket attacks, and military operations have left deep scars. For Israelis, the threat of terrorism is a constant reality. For Palestinians, the loss of land, freedom, and loved ones has created despair and anger. 2. Refugees and displacement. The Palestinian refugee crisis remains one of the most enduring legacies of the conflict. Millions of Palestinians live in refugee camps. These camps are located in the West Bank, Gaza, Jordan, Lebanon, and Syria. Refugees dream of returning to their ancestral homes. Israel rejects this demand, fearing it would undermine its Jewish majority. 3. The psychological toll. The conflict has taken a heavy psychological toll on both sides. Israelis live with the trauma of wars and terrorist attacks. Palestinians endure the hardships of occupation, checkpoints, and economic hardship. The cycle of violence has left many feeling hopeless about the future. Part 5. The current state of the conflict. 1. Settlements and annexation. Israeli settlements in the West Bank and East Jerusalem remain a major obstacle to peace. The international community considers them illegal under international law. Israel disputes this. The expansion of settlements has fragmented Palestinian territories. It has undermined the prospects for a two-state solution. In 2020, Israel announced plans to annex parts of the West Bank. This sparked international condemnation. It further complicated the conflict. 2. The role of international actors. The United States has been a key ally of Israel. It provides military and diplomatic support. However, its unwavering support has often been criticized as biased. Other countries, including those in the European Union and the Arab world, have called for a two-state solution. This solution is based on the 1967 borders. The Abraham Accords were signed in 2020. They normalized relations between Israel and several Arab states. However, they did not address the Palestinian issue. 3. The rise of extremism. On both sides, extremism has grown. In Israel, far-right groups advocate for the annexation of the West Bank. They oppose concessions to Palestinians. Among Palestinians, support for armed resistance and rejection of peace talks has increased. This is particularly true among younger generations. Part 6. The path to peace. 1. A two-state solution. The two-state solution envisions an independent Palestine alongside Israel. It has long been the international consensus. However, the realities on the ground have made it increasingly difficult to achieve. Settlements, division among Palestinians, and political polarization are major obstacles. 2. A one-state solution? Some argue that a single binational state with equal rights for all is the only viable option. However, this idea faces significant challenges. Resistance comes from both Israelis and Palestinians. 3. The role of dialogue and empathy. Ultimately, peace will require dialogue, compromise, and empathy. Both Israelis and Palestinians must confront painful truths. They must make difficult concessions. The international community must play a constructive role. It must support efforts to build trust and address the root causes of the conflict. Conclusion: a call for hope and healing. The Jewish-Arab conflict is a story of pain, loss, and resilience. It is a story of two peoples bound by history and geography. They are struggling to find a way to coexist. While the path to peace is fraught with challenges, it is not impossible. As we reflect on this conflict, let us remember the human faces behind the headlines. The children who dream of a better future, the families torn apart by violence, the countless individuals working tirelessly for peace. Their stories remind us that even in the darkest of times, hope endures. Let us strive for a future where Jews and Arabs can live side by side, a future of peace and dignity on the land they both call home.